Hey, what's happening YouTube? Acro Breeder here, coming at you from sunny South Florida. Another day in paradise here. Mental illness has subsided amongst my fellow citizens. I made my way out into the public. Life is becoming more normal here in South Florida. Hope everyone's doing good. This is my 40-gallon breeder. Little progress this month. I did some fragging on my red table. Following this update, I have some footage showing this process. I had some die off in the center of the colony and wanted to fix that issue. All the inhabitants in this tank are doing well. Coral growth as well. I'm gonna do my feeding. I get a lot of talk about my sand sifting goby not having a sand bed. He did when I purchased him, and I removed the sand bed, decided to keep him. I've had him for a few years without sand. As you can see, he eats plenty. He's very fat. It's my most common negative comment after all this content I put out. It's kind of odd people focus on that. What you gonna do? Acan colonies melting down on the glass. I plan on doing some fragging today. Just make a few bucks back. I plan on buying some higher end acros. I want to remove these two entire colonies. I want to add a colony at this dead spot here. Other than that, not too much going on here. This green acan really turned out nice. It's got some gold stripes in it. I purchased this as a single head a few years back. It's the other side of the tank. I'm starting to experiment with growing acros on the glass. This is a red planet. It was my initial one. I added a few more. Colors seem nice. They did change a little bit due to the lower par, but they are starting to base down on the glass, throw out new tips. This is a PC rainbow. So I'm happy with that. This is my frag holding sump down below. Gonna have to thin that out here soon. Similar this month with the 75. Business as usual, everything's doing good. I'll go ahead and do a feeding on this tank too. I did lose my male Anthea. I've had 3 for, I don't know, past year or so. He developed, I believe was Popeye, and hid in this cave for about 2 weeks, and I believe starved to death. I tried to kind of target feed him when I could, but the loss of the vision in his eye just, I don't know, made him feel very insecure, and he just kind of stayed in this cave until he perished. A little upset about it. Gonna look into purchasing another male Anthea. He really was a nice feature to the tank. Pink fin fairy wrasse, maturing, hopefully developing into a male here in the future. Currently a female. She really likes to light up though in the evening. Turns very pale white and harasses everyone else in the tank. Well, what you gonna do? Corals on the glass here, doing good. This is a orange and purple micromusa. I believe it was 2 or 3 polyps. Melting down, kind of colliding here with this, I believe sunset monopora. So I'm gonna do some fragging here where they're meeting. Give them a little space. Really digging this acan. It was sold to me as an Asian acan. It is fluorescent teal blue and orange. It's just really striking in person. It's a very slow grower. The few acans that were sold to me as Asian acans have all been growing very slow. You can see the hammer there catching some of the food. Polyp extension, excellent on the milliporas and acros. I need to remove this entire colony of Slimer. Gotta find somewhere to get rid of that. I got a few polyps here of blastos. Here's the side boob shot. Got a few acans on the glass here. Doing well. The other side. Oh. My Zoa seahorse tank, I've had a lot of issues with. I'm really struggling growing Zoanthids. Kind of getting into the Zoanthids after acros, and they've been more of a challenge for me. I'm learning. I was struggling here with high alkalinity that was causing them to close. You can see these magicians are closed. Some of them are doing well. So I'm getting there, I'm figuring them out. Seahorses are thriving. I believe I've owned them for about 8 months. They are tiger tails. I think they have a lifespan of a little over a year. Hopefully I get a little more out of them than that. I did lose this Gorgonian. Not too sure why. I was doing well for several months, and just overnight, one night, bit the dust. The seahorses do have a habit of sleeping on it, so I think it may have just irritated it to death. You can see this one's hanging on this other Gorgonian. I did turn up the flow recently on this tank, thinking it would help with the zoanthids, and it's made it a little more challenging for the seahorses to eat, but they've seemed to evolve and figure out how to hunt down the mysis. All right, well, that's all I got for my update. I'm going to have some fragging footage of that red table following this. Thank you for watching. This is the last look at the 40 breeder before I do some pretty heavy fragging. My main issue I want to tackle is this red table, Acropora. It's collecting detritus in the center, and I've been lazy and haven't been turkey blasting it out, and I'm getting some die off, and then there's algae, and I'm afraid it's going to spread. So I'm going to just frag out, kind of rake down the center, and create 2 individual colonies. So here's the last look. It's completely alive underneath. I thought about initially trying to just kind of bore a hole straight down and hope it would return, but it's almost like an inch thick at that point, believe it or not. I'm considering taking out this entire colony and this entire Slimer colony, which grew from the remains of this green Slimer colony in the corner. I had moved it, and just from the encrusting, this has grown in a few months. I'm in the middle of the fragging process. You can see the coral slime everywhere. The first thing I did was frag the main portion of this ultimate effluent. It was growing upwards under the shade of this tricolor, and it was approaching the main colony. So I cut the top of this off, and then I removed, in this location centered on the screen was this red shortcake, and I want to move this over to where this area was completely covered in green Slimer. So I've cut all the large chunks off. I'm gonna have to come back and try to scrape everything off. I mean, I've already done this once, and everything in here has grown from it. So I got my station set up here. I'm watching Tidal Gardens. Yep, this is my evening. It's scraped down. It's looking a little crazy in here. All this slime intertwining in the other corals makes me a little nervous, but my past experience, it should be all right. Time to attack the red table. So this process was going good. I was making my way down the middle, and somehow, I do not know how, I fragged off that big of a piece with these tiny snips. I'm not too worried about it. It'll actually make this job a little bit easier to cut out all this death. And I'll just glue it back on. Notice something interesting. If you look at the cross section, it's not completely alive. You can see there's almost a hole at one point where the issue has kind of been persistent. I guess it kind of would die off and then grow over itself continually. I mean, so about right there, it's all alive, and then there's even a little layer here on the top that was starting. I thought this cross section was pretty interesting. There's even a little tunnel over there. You can see one of the vents inside the colony on this side. Interesting stuff. Here in the shop, fragging station, got a 80s era Craftsman screwdriver and a piece of shit Harbor Freight hammer. I'm gonna attempt to frag this half colony in half. I don't have anyone to hold a camera, so I'll get back to you. Surgery is finished. It was a complete success. One swift whack with the old Harbor Freight hammer, and she split right where I wanted. Decided to keep the middle piece on, just kind of widen this gap. Glued in real easy, matched it up with the bottom. So this does look hideous at the moment with the exposed white coral, but that is live coral. It will heal over. I'm curious to see if this spikes my alkalinity consumption, all this trauma. But I think it's going to add a nice dynamic to the colony, having two pillars coming off, and it will serve, you know, the original reason I did this, as all the detritus was settling in the middle, and over time it was just going to spread out and look horrible. So I went from a big shelf to kind of a more dynamic dual pillar. Pretty happy with the results. There was one casualty here on a Nacropora. I'll have to glue that back. And then this is the shortcake colony that I still need to glue where the Slimer came out. A few days later, here's the babies from the red table. I have the flow off because I'm doing some more fragging here. Let's take advantage of that and do a top down. So my main concern is, you can see where I removed the green Slimer, there's still a few polyps. Now it's not going to be an issue for me to reach back in there and cut them out, but from my experience, this white remaining skeleton, it's just going to grow back.